And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, as per usual, we are going to do a quick recap of all of the NBA games that happened last night. And let's see, what game should we start with? Do we want to start with the Lakers? You know what? Why not? Let's start with the Lakers game. I know how a lot of people feel about LeBron, and they don't like LeBron, but too bad. So. And speaking of LeBron, once again, he does everything in his power to try to win, and they lose. It never fails. It's like it's a triangle for the Lakers. It's like they start doing well, you start getting hope, and then they start to disappoint you. And now you're back to being sad. They wasted another 30-point game from LeBron James, 31 points, 13 assists, and 5 rebounds. They completely wasted that performance, and they also wasted Rui Hachimura's performance, where he ended the game with 29 points, 3 of 5 from 3, and 13 of 17 from the field. Everybody else on the team played horribly. And the Kings, for some reason, they always beat the Lakers. I don't know what it is. They just do not like the Lakers, and they take every single Lakers game extremely personally. Like, De'Aaron Fox does not like LeBron. It seems every single game that he plays against LeBron, he ends up dropping 40 points. And not to mention, Domantas Sabonis against Anthony Davis, he has a record of 9-0. Anthony Davis has never outplayed Domantas Sabonis in any game. And it infuriates me because Anthony Davis, he is supposed to be in the conversation as one of the best centers in the NBA. That's where he should have been. That's where he was projected to be in at this point in his career. But he's not. He's getting outplayed by Domantas Sabonis. Now, no disrespect to Sabonis whatsoever. He is a triple-double demon. He is so good at getting triple-doubles. And he actually had one last night. He ended the game with 16 points, 20 rebounds, and 12 assists. Completely outplaying Anthony Davis. He shot 7 for 13 from the field as well. But this is the problem with Anthony Davis. He is so inconsistent. I say this every single time. One game, he'll end it with 35 and 15. Then the next game, he'll end with like 15 and 5. And I'm like, what is going on? Why can't you just stay consistent? It's almost like, I say this every single time, it's almost like he needs the media or people to criticize him or to tell him to start trying hard instead of just trying hard. And I don't get it. I said De'Aaron Fox, he always drops 40. He ended the game with 44 points tonight. Malik Monk ended the game with 26 points this night. And Davion Mitchell ended the game perfect from the field, 4 for 4 from 3 with 12 points. So this was obviously like a great game coming in from the Kings. One problem for the Lakers, other than everything else that I just mentioned with the Lakers, LeBron James was seen exiting and going to the locker room due to an ankle injury. He said he was trying to manage it, and he's been managing it for like the entirety of the season, which is absolutely ridiculous because he is dropping all of these points on a bum ankle. Like, if that doesn't scream greatest player of all time, I really don't know what does. And again, wasted a perfectly good performance from LeBron James. D'Angelo Russell this game, he actually was talking on a podcast saying he could barely jump, and he's cooking everyone's favorite player. Well, you didn't cook De'Aaron Fox tonight. He ended the game with 10 points, 3 of 10 from the field. Anthony Davis, 5 of 13 from the field, 14 points. Austin Reeves, 6 of 15 from the field, 18 points. And nobody else was able to get into double digits. Spencer Dinwiddie, so far, he has been far from the production that he's been on Brooklyn. And I don't even think he's scored in double digits in any of these Lakers games that I've seen. It's really concerning. And it's not like they're not implementing him in the rotation. He gets more minutes out of anyone that comes off of the bench. And that is a problem for the Lakers. Because if you are playing 24 minutes in a game just to get 8 points, that is not helping. Also, RIP Kobe Bryant, 24 minutes, 8 points. But I digress about that game. Clearly, a lot of problems that the Lakers still have to figure out. Another team that has a lot of problems that needs to figure out is the Bucks. They're back to losing. They lost to the Golden State Warriors 125-90. This was a really bad loss. They had Giannis Antetokounmpo as well, and they still lost by this much. Damian Lillard ended the game with only 20 points. Giannis ended the game with only 23 points. And Bobby Portis, who's arguably going to be the sixth man of the year, ended the game with 20 points coming off of the bench. Other than that, nobody else on the Bucks was able to get into double figures. So it makes complete sense why that team just completely lost that game. They weren't hitting shots. And knowing Doc Rivers did not make any kind of adjustments for that. Like, a perfect example that I could bring up is the fact that Bobby Portis had a good game. Why was he only playing 24 minutes? Why were other players like Malik Beasley playing more minutes than him? Why was Brook Lopez playing more minutes than him? Why did Jay Crowder almost play as many minutes as him? That does not make any sense. And Pat Connaughton, did I botch that name? Pat Connaughton, forgive me if I completely botched that name. He played 22 minutes, but he ended the game with 6 points. Are you really going to play someone that long with only 6 points? Like, put Bobby Portis in the game a little bit longer. I understand, like, these players don't play the same position as him, but we are in an era of positionless basketball. Play Bobby Portis more. And it's always been a problem with Doc trying to make adjustments, and he just doesn't do it in game. And it's going to play in the playoffs. Mark my words, that problem is going to play in the playoffs. It will. Now, on the Warriors side, Steph Curry, he didn't score less than 10 points. He ended the game with 29 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. And Jonathan Kuminga, phenomenal player, ended the game with 20 points as well. He has definitely proven himself as a very vital piece to that Golden State Warriors team. He asked Steve Kerr to give him a chance. Steve Kerr gave him a chance, and so far it's proven to be the best move that Steve Kerr has done. And let's keep looking at the rest of the bench. Trace Jackson Davis ended the game with 15 points, and he shot 7 of 8 from the field. Very, very efficient. So it was overall, this was a dominant win for the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, like a dominant a game coming in from Steph Curry. The team shot 48% from 3, which is definitely the biggest reason as to why they ended up winning, because the Bucks only shot 28% from 3. And they really have to figure it out. Like, the Bucks, now is not the time to play around with your food. You have to figure it out. Otherwise, the rest of these teams in the East are going to take away that second seed, which they worked so hard to get to after, winning all of these games coming out of the All-Star break. Now the time is running out because the Knicks, they're going to be on the rise once all their players come back from injury, and they need that high seed to avoid playing, God forbid, play the Miami Heat again, and then the Miami Heat do their usual thing and beat the Bucks. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but we'll see because we still have no idea. Now, another game that went down last night, a team that doesn't really get all that much coverage, the Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero is probably the most irrelevant first overall pick in recent memory. Like, no media outlet talks about him for some reason. It might be because he's on the Orlando Magic, but it's not like he's playing bad, and it's not like he's not producing any great numbers. He ended the game with 25 points, 10 assists, and was arguably like the most well-rounded player on this team. He wasn't the leading scorer, however. The leading scorer of this game was Franz Wagner for the team, and they beat the Wizards 119-109. You guys already know how I feel about the Wizards and Jordan Poole. I think they are a major disappointment, and the fact that it took Jordan Poole to come off the bench to actually start playing basketball again really says a lot about his character, because it's like he only plays well when he needs to prove something to everyone. And even then, while he did lead the team in scoring, he did not play well at all. And something about Jordan Poole, I just don't understand his mentality. He goes for highlight reels more than he goes for wins. And whenever a player has that mentality, I just cannot stand it because the focus is them, and it's not team, which produces winning basketball. And that is part of the reason why the Wizards are on this losing streak. And quite funny, the Pistons, they hold the record for the longest losing streak in NBA history with 28. The Wizards, they haven't won a game in a while, and they're slowly creeping up to that record. And guess what the team is that they're going to play to decide whether they lose 28 straight games? The Detroit Pistons. So, if the Wizards continue losing, once they get to that 27th game, the next game that they play is against the Pistons, which will determine whether or not they are also going to hold the record for the longest losing streak in NBA history, which will be absolutely hilarious because Kyle Kuzma earlier this season, he tweeted when the Detroit Pistons were losing to the Boston Celtics, "Don't be that team." And so far, the Wizards, they have the exact same record as the Detroit Pistons. They are being that team right now. And it's incredibly ironic because it's like, how much worse can you get? Everyone was expecting Jordan Poole to average at least 30 points on the Wizards. He has the green light. He has all the room to shoot. He can take all the shots that he wants. And he's just been far from that in every single aspect of playing. Completely far from that. He is not the player that anybody thought that he was. But I digress. Now, I mentioned earlier about how Atlanta was fighting for a play-in spot. They recently just beat the Cavs after the Cavs came off of a very big win against the Boston Celtics, coming back from the largest deficit in the season. And there was still no Donovan Mitchell. So might play into a part as to why the Hawks ended up winning. But again, the Hawks didn't have Trae Young, so they were also shorthanded. And this is a little bit concerning for the Cavs because the fact that you're losing to a play-in team and you're expected to be better than the Knicks, not ideal. Definitely not ideal for this team. Jarrett Allen ended the game with 18 and 19, and Darius Garland ended the game with 15 and 7. And there was really the scoring was relatively spread, but there wasn't really anybody that ended the game with 20 points, which definitely played a part as to why they lost. The team shot 22% from three, very, very bad, compared to the Hawks, who shot 36% from three and 51% from the field. So it might have been just the Hawks' night, and it might not have been the Cavs' night. And that happens in the regular season. Some players, in some teams, they go on a moment where it's they just can't get a basket to save their life. And that's okay because we're all human. We don't expect everybody to just make every single shot. If you do, you are insane. But regardless, Bogdanović ended the game with 23 points. Sadiq Bey ended the game with 23 points as well. DeJounte Murray did not play well, but it didn't matter for them. 18 points, 7 for 21 from the field. Obviously, very piss-poor shooting. But again, didn't matter for them as they ended up getting the win. And a win is a win is a win. I will gladly take any wins that I can, especially as a Nets fan. Now, let's see. Some other important games that happened last night. OKC, they ended up winning against Portland. I mentioned earlier how Biyombo collapsed on the court just out of nowhere. Shai Gilgeous ended the game with 37 points. Chet Holmgren ended the game with 21 and 14. And Jalen Williams ended the game with 31 points as well. And this team, this Oklahoma City Thunder team, they're very odd. They could go they could go on a streak where they win against great teams and then they just immediately lose to some really bad teams the very next day. And it's really difficult to sort of scale exactly where they belong and what their ceiling is in the postseason because again, they beat great teams, but now they're losing to bad teams. Now, some other people, they might say, that's not really something to worry about because it's they're not going to play those bad teams in the playoffs. So the fact that they're winning against good teams now definitely plays a big part of winning in the playoffs. But still, it is really concerning how, a lot of these teams are getting close, are playing in close games with the Thunder, and the fact that they lost to the Pistons. But Fernie Simmons ended the game with 29 points. So far, he's looking like a great pickup for the Portland Trailblazers. I've had a hunch that he was going to be the next man up once Damian Lillard left. And so far, that has proven to be true. He's very, very productive on the offensive side of the ball. He's averaging 22 points per game this season. So this was a great game from him. Jeremy Grant ended the game with 20 points. But obviously, like we know, this Trailblazers team, it needs a rebuild, and it needs to happen right now. And obviously, they're not where they are. They're not where the team. I expected them to be bad. I didn't really expect them to be this bad, however. But I guess that's what happens when you remove Dame from Rip City. Now, another game that happened was Clippers matching up against the Houston Rockets. They ended up winning the game 122-116. Sengun played phenomenally in this game, ended the game with 23 points, 19 rebounds, 14 assists. Triple-double, I said he was really, really similar to Jokic, and just a younger version of him with how he plays and how he can get all these assists and how he makes it look easy. And he is a great player. This is what the Rockets should build around from. Do not build around Jabari Smith. Do not build around Jalen Green. Do not do that. Don't do that. Build around Sengun. Sengun is the answer. He is the answer to all the Houston Rockets' problems. On the Clippers side, everybody had a great game. James Harden, he had 21 points. Kawhi Leonard, 28 points. And Paul George, also 21 points. So very, very spread with the scoring. Also very efficient with the scoring as well. And they shot 41% from three as a team, 55% from the field. And that was, I wouldn't say that was the difference maker with this team, with this team winning. It was more so they got hot when they needed to in this matchup. And they were lucky that there were some players on the Houston Rockets that did not really perform as well as they normally do, like Fred VanVleet, who ended the game 5 of 14 from the field with 15 points. And not only that, Jalen Green shot chucking a bunch, 6 for 14, 15 points. So obviously, this wasn't really a big win for the Clippers because we totally expected them to win, but still, this Rockets team, I have a feeling they're going to be really good coming to the future. They just need that chemistry down. Now, another game that went down was Philly losing to the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies are one of the bad teams in the NBA because they do not have Ja Morant for this season. Ja Morant, he had surgery after getting injured. After a few days after returning from his suspension, and so this season is sort of chalked up for Memphis. If the box scores will actually load, then I can tell you exactly what the stats are, but it doesn't look like the box scores are going to load here, so I'm just going to completely ignore that game and talk about the Chicago Bulls beating the Utah Jazz by only 2 points. But still, right now the Chicago Bulls are 9th in the Eastern Conference and looking to play in the play-in, and DeMar DeRozan ended the game with 29 points. Kobe White ended the game with 25 points. Also, he's in the argument for being Most Improved Player of the Year. I actually think he's going to win that award. He's been playing very well with the Bulls. And Vucevic ended the game with 23 points. And they're doing this all without Zach LaVine, who is by far the team's best player. They do have the pieces to be a great team. It's just they just haven't been a great team. And I don't understand why they were losing to all of those teams with Zach LaVine. And they do this every single time Zach LaVine wants to get traded. The Bulls end up holding on to him, and it's really, really annoying. And it's what are you going to do with the team? Are you going to blow it all up, or are you going to actually try to compete? And the Jazz, they're in a rebuilding state right now, but that doesn't mean that they have bad players. They still have John Collins, and they still have Colin Sexton. John Collins ended the game with 25 points and 13 rebounds. Which is honestly very impressive. And let's see who else played well. Bryce Sensabaugh ended the game with 15 points and 12 rebounds as well. And Colin Sexton ended the game with 24 points. Jordan Clarkson ended the game with 15 points coming off the bench. And again, rebuilding team. I don't really expect much from the Utah Jazz anymore. Let's see if the box score finally loaded for the Sixers and the Memphis Grizzlies game. So I'm going to talk about that and end the segment because we're going to go on into the fourth segment shortly after. Nobody on the Sixers really played well. other than Kelly Oubre, who came off of the bench. I don't know why he's coming off of the bench now, but again, Nick Nurse, I mean, his substitutions, they're much better than Doc's. So I actually trust Nick Nurse a lot more with this team and the management of the lineup. And with this in mind, though, however, they still need Embiid, because Jaren Jackson Jr. ended the game with 30 points. I really think that if they had Embiid in this game, his production, along with his defense, would have canceled out Jaren Jackson's production, and they would have probably ended up winning this game, and they would probably be in a completely different situation than what they're in right now. 7th in the Eastern Conference, definitely like a very big drop-off for the Sixers, not what I expected from them whatsoever. And that's basically all the games that happened from last night. So now we are going to go on into the 4th segment, where I go ahead and look at the MVP rankings and seeing what players are in the top 10, if they're relatively the same or if they're going to be different. So I will be right back after this short break.